by $1.8 trillion. Over the economic and political life of this country. Today, the two wealthiest people in America own more wealth than the bottom 40%. You got that? Two people own more wealth than the bottom 40%. Top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 92%. And since the Wall Street crash of 2009, 45% of all new income has gone to the 1%. During the pandemic that we're in right now, 700 billionaires, not many, in America have increased their wealth by $1.8 trillion. At the same time as essential workers, people who do public transportation, people who work in grocery stores, people who work in healthcare, have died by the thousands. So we are living in a nation where the people on top are doing phenomenally well. They have so much money, they don't even know what to do with it. And now some of them are off in outer space, spending their billions. Well, we think maybe it might be a good idea, before you go off to outer space, to start paying attention to the struggles of working families on the ground. Meanwhile, while the very rich become much richer, working families from coast to coast are struggling to put food on the table. 90 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured in terms of health care. We pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Almost 600,000 Americans are sleeping out on the streets, and millions of young people are struggling with outrageous levels of student debt, while hundreds of thousands of bright young kids can't afford to get a higher education. Incredibly, since 1971, at a time when we have seen an explosion of technology and worker productivity, the average American worker is not making a nickel more in real wages, inflation accounted for wages, than they did 50 years ago. That's the state of the economy. And we need to pass this legislation because in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, it is simply not morally acceptable that so many good people are struggling economically to provide for their families, and when half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. We can do better than that. And we need to pass this legislation because we are sick and tired of seeing so many of our people earn starvation wages. And I have been all over your great state, and I've talked to the people who make $9, $10 an hour. And that is why this legislation, as it begins to address the long-neglected needs of America, will create millions of good-paying jobs. So let me briefly tell you what is in this legislation, and Stacy touched on some of the points. My Republican colleagues are saying, well, we can't support this bill because it's going to raise taxes. Well, they're right. At a time when billionaires in this country don't pay a nickel in federal income tax in a given year, we are going to raise taxes on the billionaire class. And at a time when large profitable corporations make billions in profit and in some years do not pay a penny in federal income taxes, yes, we are going to demand that those corporations start paying their fair share of taxes. As a result of the American Rescue Plan that Congress passed a number of months ago, as I mentioned earlier, we have significantly reduced childhood poverty and helped families, young families, single moms in Iowa and Vermont and around this country be better able to take care of their kids. What this reconciliation bill is about is whether or not we extend those payments. The way the American Rescue Plan was written, by definition, it was an emergency bill in the middle of the pandemic. And we said we got to help those families right now. If we do not pass the reconciliation bill, those payments end at the end of this year. That is not acceptable. Working families need that help, and this bill will extend that help for years to come.
Senator Sanders already mentioned that that recovery bill was passed only by Democrats.
Furthermore, this bill will address an issue we don't talk enough about, and that is the dysfunctionality of child care in America. Now, here we are as a nation, we talk about how much we love our kids, they're the future of America, etc., etc. And yet, in Vermont, I don't know what it is in Iowa, but nationally and in Vermont, it costs about $15,000 a year for a child in child care. $15,000. So if you are earning $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, you're spending a huge chunk of your money to have your kid taken care of so you can go to work. That is wrong. And under this bill, we will move toward a situation where no household in America spends more than 7% of their income for child care, and many lower income families will have child care for free. And when we do that, by the way, we're going to address multiple crises within child care. That is, number one, child care workers today earn starvation wages. We're going to raise those wages. In many parts of the country, working families cannot even find child care space. We're going to build the facilities. And on top of all of that, remember what we're doing here for the kids. $300 per child for working families. Radical change in child care. We're going to make pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds universal and free.
That's good. So
that means essentially expanding public education by an additional 2 years.
Amen.
And by the way, just in passing, right now in Vermont, don't know the story here in Iowa, we have a worker shortage. There are many good-paying, unfilled jobs where employers cannot find workers. When we do the right thing for child care and pre-K, more than 1 million workers, mostly women, will be able to rejoin the workforce. Let me tell you what else we're doing in this bill. This is a lot of fun. The United States today is the only major country, and virtually the only country on earth, very few countries, that does not guarantee paid family and medical leave. What am I talking about? What I'm talking about is that if you as a worker get sick and you have to stay home, you're not going to get paid. If your kid gets sick and you have to stay home, your mom gets sick, your dad gets sick, and you have to stay home, you do not get paid. What I'm talking about is the vulgarity that in this country, if you are a low-income woman and you give birth today to a baby, you may have to go back to work in a week because your family needs the income. Anybody here know what kind of programs exist in Europe, Scandinavia, when families have babies? Anybody here know, out of curiosity? Do you know that in countries all over the world, mothers get 7, 8, 9 months off to bond with their babies, at full pay or three-quarter pay, or whatever it may be. Dads get time off to bond with their babies. And maybe in America we should not force low-income women to go back to work because they don't have the money to take care of their families. So this bill, for the first time, will finally provide up to 3 weeks of paid family and medical leave for the working people of this country. And when we talk about education, I think everybody here knows that if we are going to compete globally in the international economy, we need the best educated workforce in the world. It is insane that we're forcing young people to go tens and tens of thousands of dollars into debt in order to get the education they need to do the important work that has to be done. And it is disgraceful that so many of our young people cannot even go to higher education because they lack the money. Now, my own view, and I'm just my own view, is that I think we should make public colleges and universities tuition free. We should cancel all student debt in this country. That is my view. Unfortunately, I got 49 other members of the caucus. They don't all agree with me. But what we are doing here in this bill is making 2 years of community college tuition free. And that means that if you want to go to a 4-year school, you got your credits for 2 years, you could transfer them to University of Iowa, Iowa State, or wherever you want to go, and you get those credits already paid for. In addition to that, we are going to significantly increase Pell Grants, and we're going to increase funding for historically black colleges and universities. And what that means is not only will those credits be transferable to a 4-year school, it means that for many young people out there, they want to get into the building trades, a lot of construction work going on. They want to earn $60,000, $70,000 a year doing an important craft. Going to community college tuition free will give them that ability. I will tell you right now that in Vermont, again, I don't know about Iowa, we have a massive shortage of nurses. This will give opportunity to young people who want to go into the enormously important profession of nursing, the opportunity to get that education to do that work. In America today, we got some 600,000 people who are homeless, many sleeping out on the streets. 2 blocks from the nation's capital, there is a homeless encampment of people living out in tents. 2 blocks away from the nation's capital, we have some 18 million households in America who are spending 50% of their limited incomes on housing. This legislation will pump more money into the construction of low-income and affordable housing than any bill in the history of this country. And needless to say, when we do that, we're going to create an enormous number of good-paying jobs. Further, we are an aging society. Iowa is an aging state. Vermont is an aging state. The nation is aging. And whether people have severe disabilities or whether they are just getting old, we have millions of people who would prefer to stay in their own homes, get care in their homes, rather than be forced into a nursing home. This bill, in an unprecedented way, will put a significant amount of money into home health care and pay those workers a living wage. Now, as many of you know, the United States is the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a human right. We're the only one. We pay by far the highest amount of money per person for healthcare, somewhere around $10,000, and yet 90 million people are uninsured or underinsured. We pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, and up to 60,000 people a year die because they don't get to a doctor on time. Now, my own view, again, I am speaking only for myself, my own view is that healthcare is a human right, not a privilege. That we need to guarantee healthcare to all people, and that we should do it through a Medicare for all single-payer program. This bill does not do that. I wish it did, but it does not. But what this bill does do is several things. It will expand Medicare to cover dental care, hearing aids, and eyeglasses. We will bring about the most significant reforms of Medicare in 50 years. Too many of our elderly people in Vermont, and I'm sure in Iowa, trying to digest their food without teeth in their mouths because they can't afford dentures. They can't talk to their grandchildren because they can't afford hearing aids. Many of them cannot see properly. They cannot afford glasses. So we're going to reform and expand Medicare, and I'll tell you how we're going to fund that. We're going to fund that program by having Medicare negotiate prescription drug prices with the pharmaceutical industry. Right now, today, pharmaceutical industry can charge us any price they want for any drugs. They never lose. They control the United States Congress. We are on the verge, I hope, of finally bringing about the first defeat of the very powerful pharmaceutical industry in the history of this country. So in other words, and there's much more that's in this bill, one of the areas that I have been concerned about is in rural areas all over America, we don't have the doctors and the dentists and the nurses that we need. This bill will go a long way to making that happen. There's a lot of other stuff in the bill. But I want to say a word about another issue. So I think some of our friends think they could drown us out. Ain't gonna happen. And what this bill does is, in an unprecedented way, make massive investments in having the United States lead the world in combating climate change and lowering greenhouse gas emissions.
Today is Monday, September 20th, 2021. Senator Sanders spoke
It really
on
does pain
August
me, and
29th,
it really is, you know, I
2021.
understand politics and people have different points of view, etc., etc. But it is just hard for me literally to understand how Republican colleagues who are dads and moms and grandfathers and grandmothers are not worried about what climate change is doing to the future of this planet for their own kids and grandchildren. I just don't get that. And I don't get a fossil fuel industry which is prepared to make more and more short-term profits while they are destroying the climate and this country and the world. So this bill finally begins to invest significantly in moving this country to carbon emissions, to moving this country to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And one of the provisions in this bill that I have championed for a long time with other members, and I'm very excited about this, is the creation of a civilian climate corps. And what this will do, and I want you to appreciate this, you got a younger generation out there, and I've seen young people all over the country who are passionately concerned about climate change. This bill will provide them with good wages and educational benefits as they go out helping us lead the world in transforming our energy system. We're going to put billions of dollars into a civilian climate corps. Hundreds of thousands of young people will have the jobs they want, helping us deal with this existential threat.